The laws of the Etruscans, what little we know of pre-Roman justice. Long before Roman jurists turned law into an almost obsessive science, the Italian peninsula already had rules, courts, punishments, and sacred procedures. The frustrating part is this: the people who shaped much of early Roman political and religious life, the Etruscans, left us almost no law codes we can actually read. What we know about Etruscan law is a puzzle assembled from tomb paintings, ritual texts, scattered inscriptions, hostile Roman authors, and educated guesswork. And yet, even in fragments, Etruscan justice feels strikingly sophisticated, deeply religious, and in some ways unsettlingly alien. The absence of 12 Tables of Etruria is not an accident of history alone, it reflects how Etruscans understood law itself. For them, justice was not merely civic regulation, it was cosmic alignment. Law was not just enforced by magistrates but overseen by gods, interpreted by priests, and woven into the fate of cities. Law as sacred order, not civil contract. One thing becomes clear almost immediately: Etruscan law was inseparable from religion. While Roman law gradually secularized, the Etruscans never fully separated legal norms from divine will. Their concept of disciplina Etrusca, a body of sacred knowledge revealed by the gods, regulated not only rituals and divination but also political authority, boundaries, and punishment. According to Roman tradition, this sacred knowledge was revealed by a miraculous child prophet named Tejas, who rose from the earth and taught humans the divine rules governing the world. Whether myth or metaphor, the message is clear: law came from the gods, not from human consensus. To violate the law was not just to break a rule but to disrupt cosmic balance. This mindset shaped justice profoundly. Trials were not simply about facts and witnesses, they were about interpreting signs, omens, and divine approval. A legal decision made without regard to the gods was invalid, even dangerous. In my opinion, this makes Etruscan law feel less primitive than often assumed, and more radically different. It was not an early stage of Roman legal rationalism, it was a parallel tradition with a completely different foundation. Kings, magistrates, and sacred authority. Etruscan cities were independent city-states, each ruled at various times by kings, locumones, and later by aristocratic magistrates. These rulers were not merely political leaders, they held religious authority essential to law enforcement. The symbols of Roman magistracy, the fasces, the curule chair, the toga praetexta, are all borrowed from Etruscan political culture. The fasces are especially revealing. A bundle of rods with an axe at its center, they symbolized the power to punish, flog, and execute. This was not metaphorical. Justice was visible, ceremonial, and public. Punishment was a ritual act reinforcing order. Roman writers often portray Etruscan kings as harsh, even tyrannical. But this may say more about Roman republican propaganda than Etruscan reality. What matters is that law enforcement was centralized and sacred. There was no sharp division between judge, priest, and ruler. Crime and punishment, what the tombs suggest. Because no Etruscan criminal code survives, we rely heavily on archaeology. Tomb paintings, reliefs, and grave goods hint at what society considered transgression and punishment. Scenes from the underworld are particularly revealing. Etruscan afterlife imagery is brutal compared to early Roman beliefs. Demons like Charon, later Roman Charon, wield hammers, threaten souls, and oversee punishment. This suggests a legal imagination deeply concerned with retribution beyond death. Some scholars argue that Etruscans believed earthly justice was incomplete, requiring divine correction in the afterlife. If true, this would explain why formal legal texts were less emphasized. Ultimate judgment belonged to the gods. Capital punishment clearly existed. Roman sources claim Etruscans practiced execution for treason and sacrilege, possibly including ritualized killings. There is also evidence of enslavement as punishment and collective responsibility, where families or clans shared guilt. From a modern perspective, this feels harsh, but it fits a society where law protected sacred order above individual rights. Property, boundaries, and sacred space. One area where Etruscan law left a lasting mark is property and boundaries. The act of founding a city, marking land, or drawing borders was governed by strict ritual law. Boundary stones, cippi, were sacred objects, and moving them was a grave offense with both legal and religious consequences. Rome inherited this mindset almost intact. The Roman god Terminus, protector of boundaries, is likely derived from Etruscan practices. In both cultures, land law was not negotiable, it was divinely sanctioned. This suggests that Etruscan civil law, especially regarding property, was precise and formalized, even if unwritten. Disputes over land were not just private matters but threats to cosmic stability. Family law and social hierarchy. Etruscan society was aristocratic, and law reflected that reality. Elite families dominated politics, religion, and justice. Yet women appear unusually visible compared to Greek and early Roman norms. Etruscan women owned property, attended banquets, and were publicly named in inscriptions. This visibility likely had legal implications. While we cannot reconstruct full family law, inscriptions suggest women retained family names and legal identity after marriage. That alone marks a significant difference from Roman patria potestas. Slavery existed, and slaves had no legal personhood. Foreigners occupied a liminal space, protected by custom but vulnerable. Again, this resembles early Rome, reinforcing the idea that Roman law did not emerge from nothing but from an Etruscan-influenced legal culture. Trials without texts, how justice worked in practice. So how were disputes actually resolved? Probably through assemblies of elites, overseen by magistrates with religious authority. Oaths played a central role. Swearing falsely was not just perjury, it invited divine punishment. Divination may have influenced verdicts. Consulting omens before legal decisions sounds irrational today, but in Etruscan logic, ignoring the gods was irrational. Justice without divine consent was illegitimate. There is no evidence of professional lawyers or legal theory. Law was customary, ritualized, and conservative. Change came slowly, if at all. Roman misunderstanding and historical silence. Much of what we think we know comes from Roman authors who despised Etruscan kingship and portrayed Etruscans as decadent or cruel. This bias matters. Rome conquered Etruria militarily, and then culturally erased it. The Romans adopted Etruscan legal symbols while denying Etruscan intellectual credit. Etruscan law became invisible precisely because it was absorbed and transformed. In my view, the silence around Etruscan justice is not proof of primitiveness. It is evidence of a different legal philosophy, one that did not believe law belonged in public books but in sacred tradition. Understanding Etruscan law changes how we see Roman law. It reminds us that Rome's legal genius did not emerge in a vacuum. Before statutes, before jurists, before legal commentaries, there was a sacred vision of justice rooted in ritual, fear, and cosmic order. Modern legal systems pride themselves on rationality and transparency. The Etruscans would have found that dangerously arrogant. And perhaps they had a point.